What is autistic masking and how does it affect autistic people? But also, how do they become more self-confident within themselves? Well, that is what we're going to discuss. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Aspergian Journal. Autistic masking, also known as camouflaging, refers to methods, and it can be a complex and exhausting process that autistic people use to hide their autistic traits in front of neurotypical people, and also when they are in uncomfortable environments or situations where their traits and their needs are not always often met, and that with a positive response. As autistic people are more than likely to be discriminated against than other groups of people in society, they feel that they have this burning need or desire to be accepted by other people, and trying to fit in a neurotypical world that doesn't necessarily meet their needs and expectations, and often excludes them from situations and that where they not feel wanted. And it just leads to them having to deal with extra adversities and circumstances that non-autistic people take for granted. Masking amongst autistic people can occur at any age or stage in life. Mostly the habit starts, and that from an early age in childhood, but it can also manifest and as autistic people get into adulthood, even if they are aware or not of their autistic traits. Because there is lots of autistic people out there who might not have had a formal diagnosis, and they've gone through many years of their lives maybe suspecting that they had autism, but they've never got round to having a diagnosis and that tells them and that they have it or not. As well as wanting to be accepted by society, masking can also be a symptom of bullying or abuse, and that when they are at school or even in their home setting, being in environments that disregards their needs and emotions, but also scenarios where having that lack of understanding for their autism, and that is often misdiagnosed for other conditions, which only leads to then further confusion and frustration for the individuals and that are affected by it. Many studies over the years have determined that over 80% of autistic adults report to engage in masking behaviours, and that autistic females are significantly more likely to mask their autism traits than autistic males will, as autistic women are often misdiagnosed for other conditions, which only leads to further frustration and confusion for the individuals affected. There are many common masking behaviours that autistic people and that might do, and that to try and hide their autism, or sometimes in my case, and that try and deny that their autism. And these can be, forcing eye contact, and that when it feels uncomfortable talking to others. copying gestures, tones of voice and expressions and of what other people are doing, and that just to try and fit in, even though it feels unnatural for the autistic person to undertake. Repressing, your natural responses to certain situations, like limiting the amount of stimming that you do, or hiding the sensory overload distress that an autistic person might be experiencing, being in a situation that causes them anxiety, and they just have this urge and act to want to escape it, even though they're trying to force themselves to stay in that situation, and that just for the sake of appearances, and that for the group of people that they are surrounding themselves with. Now, this might go against the grain of what I've maybe discussed about in the past, about how sensory overload and that can be overwhelming for autistic people, and they have to manage it effectively and also develop themselves and that to be able to handle situations more better, because there might be situations that might cause them anxiety, but they can't avoid those environments forever, because there might be many things in life that you have to do, and that, like going to the supermarket to get your grocery shopping, going for appointments, and many other things, and that are crucial to be able to live a fully independent life. But if we allow our anxiety behaviours to control our lives in a negative way, it's only going to hold us back and limit us of what we can do. And I have the strongest belief that autistic people are capable of far more than what they realise themselves. And the amount of development that I've done as an autistic person, even only in the last 10 years, is a testament to that of how far an autistic person can go if they step outside their comfort zones and not allow their anxiety to hold them back. And this is what autism masking is. It is a negative experience for autistic people, and it's actually driven by anxiety, or having this fear of rejection, or not being liked by others, and having to force yourself into situations so people can like you more. All that does, it just creates more added pressure that you just don't necessarily need in your life, and it's something that you have to work out a way of how can I develop my skills as an autistic person to become more independent and manage things more better, but not but also respect that I do have limitations as an autistic person, and it's always going to be part of my life. And it's just finding that equilibrium, that balance between the two. A good example for me is, like nowadays, I can manage, busy situations more better than what I did as a child. But you would definitely not see me going to like a concert and that where there's like 50,000 people and all fitting into one little stadium, and to go see a music concert or so on. That would be my sensory overloading nightmare, and it's just not me. It's not just because it maybe causes a little bit of anxiety. It's just not my desire to go sit amongst 50,000 people and just being like cocooned and that, like like in a very short space, and you're there for multiple hours. You got flashing lights, noises, and a kind of environment that I would not personally like. And that's just how it exacerbates that anxiety, and really just putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation that you just don't want to do, that you just generally do not want to do. Now that's different compared to, having like anxiety or something about going to a supermarket and out for your grocery shopping. At the end of the day, you gotta do your grocery shopping and have to be able to eat, to have food in the house. So it's something that you can't avoid. So getting better and becoming less anxious about going into those situations, the far more better you will be in achieving more independence in your life. Now, I know to a lot of neurotypical people who might watch this and think, well, that's silly. How can you be anxious about going to a supermarket? But this is where the division lies, where neurotypical people are able to do things and that they just take for granted, where for autistic people, going to like the supermarket or going to their for a dentist appointment, doctor's appointment, or whatever they've got going on in their lives personally, that can be a great ordeal for them. Or even going on public transport can be an anxious thing. I mean, that was the case for me when I was a teenager. I used to be quite anxious of going on the bus on my own. But I had to learn, to use that public transport because I wasn't able to drive at the time. It was only when I got to like 25 years of age when I passed my driving test and got my own car, and I've been driving for about 8 years now. That was only when I had that true sense of freedom and independence, because I wasn't reliant on going, to like sticking to certain time scales. Like I have to catch the bus at this certain time. If I don't, I'll miss it. And and having those extra pressures where when I'm driving my car, I can come and go as and when I want to and feel in control at the same time. And when I did that and I passed my driving test, I had that independence, I saw a massive change in my anxiety levels overall, and I was able to cope with things more better, and that really was the catalyst for, from being a very anxious person to then becoming a very independent young man, and leading towards where I'm going in life. Even if that was starting out training to become an accountant, to even founding the Aspergian Journal and the great work and that I'm doing right here and now. Other masking behaviours can be like pre-planning conversations or rehearsing social scripts, and when wanting to communicate with others. Now, this might be a contrast to what I've maybe mentioned in it previously about how to develop communication skills as an autistic person, where sometimes, putting yourself in situations that helps you develop your communication and social skills, and that is the only way how you get better at doing so. But you have to be able to do that from a place of intention and to improve on those skills specifically, rather than putting yourself in situations just to try and fit in and deny yourself of your autism to shine through. Staying quiet to avoid saying the wrong thing, or smiling and laughing when you're unsure of social clues. Now, the concept of social clues and that is a big mystery for anyone on the autistic spectrum, even myself. I sometimes don't get the jokes and that others say, or what is the right approach of how to deal with certain situations, and that despite you having the best intentions and showing empathy and that towards others. Now I know that a lot of neurotypical people might say that autistic people don't know how to show empathy. No, it's not the case they don't know how. It's more the case of that they are afraid of what the reaction will be from others, and that when they do that, when they show that empathy and caringness and that towards others. Now, I've always said that autistic people are some of the most kindest and caring people that you'll ever meet. But because of society's way of having negative views towards autistic people, they just feel more inclined and act to close themselves off from the rest of the world, in essence masking who they truly are and not being able to showcase that towards others. So if anything, autistic people are more victims of their masking rather than the perpetrators for it. But the one thing that autistic people can do is not allow other people to make you into a victim. Strive stronger and other than what other people tell you to. And don't let society and that stop you and that from being the person that you truly are, and work towards the life and that you want to live with the bestest intentions and also pride and that for your autistic identity. If you focus on becoming the best version of yourself and always make yourself that 1% better every single day moving forward, you will see massive progression being made over a short space of time, and the right people will come to you. Because that's how the universe works. The more you put into it, the more you'll get out of it in return. So just focus on being your true self, and the right things will come to you at the right time. Autistic masking for me really started from when I was a child and in an autism specialist school, and teachers would tell me and my parents and that I wouldn't amount to much or I wouldn't achieve anything, and those sentiments was like the starting point of where I had these feelings of insecurities about was I autistic or not, and all that did was exacerbated my anxiety levels along with the other childhood tendencies and behaviours and that you would experience at that point in life. When I was around 8-9 years old, my IQ and that was higher and that than the remit and that the autism specialist school and that would allow from their cohort of pupils. So I was put into like mainstream schooling, starting halfway through primary, then into secondary school. But when I got to like around the start of my teenage years, or maybe a bit earlier than that, that's when the bullying and that started, and that from my non-autistic peers, and that just because I was a different child to the rest. I didn't really get involved in like sport group activities, and I'd like been on my own and living in my own world basically. And one of the things that kept me going during that time was my love for cars and Top Gear and so on. And I've actually done a newsletter and a video about autism and special interests, and that where I do delve in deeper of how my love for cars then expanded into my love and that for the James Bond franchise, and then other interests and that developed and that from that. And sometimes and that these interests and that can be lifelong, and it can bring enjoyment, and that at times, you know, when you're dealing with anxiety or stress or things in life and that you would love to get rid of, but sometimes it's not always as simple as it sounds. But as I went through my childhood years, into my teenage years, and then obviously into my 20s, I used to question my autism so much that it used to put immense pressure on me, and just because I wanted to be able to fit in with my, you know, childhood peers, and all that did was just exacerbated those insecurities, and always questioning the original diagnosis I had at 4 years old, of classic autism with moderate learning disabilities, even though my IQ was 82 at the time, and it just didn't seem to fit the bill, so to speak. And even my parents and that used to think that I'm not classic autism. I think I'm a bit more clued up in that than what the teachers and the healthcare providers would make out to be. So sometimes, even though I did get a diagnosis of autism to a certain degree, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the diagnosis and that really fits the bill or really gives a true reflection of who you are as a person. It was only when I got to like 18 years old, when I was really suffering badly with my anxiety, to the point where I was suffering with depression really bad, and I felt lost. And those feelings, you know, it did take quite a few years and that to overcome with very limited support. I did get a psychologist's report done, and that they said that I was showing signs of more Asperger's syndrome rather than the original diagnosis that I got when I was 4. But that's all I've really got to prove, and about showing what kind of autism that I had, you know. And I did really think for years about, do I maybe get re-diagnosed and that lot, and so it gives a more true reflection of who I am. And I will be doing another newsletter about, do I get a diagnosis or not, and that dilemma that most people have, and I will share what my views are on it, and that, so do keep an eye out for that. But what I found over the years, because I never really got round to getting the diagnosis done, but what I found as time went on, that I didn't necessarily need to spend hundreds of pounds. I don't know how much a diagnosis is nowadays, but, you know, to get a diagnosis that only really tells me what I already suspected already. And even if I do get it, that piece of paper, it doesn't really tell how I live my life. You know, you have to work that out for yourself. You know, and obviously, getting a diagnosis or not is your choice, and I'm not here to tell you it's right or wrong in doing so. All I'm doing, you know, basically what the entire concept of the Aspergian Journal is to show that you can live a life beyond what a piece of paper tells you, or what society, how society perpetuates this idea of autism. You know, I always think that autistic people are far more than what society tells them, and I do have the strongest belief in that they are far more capable than what people realise, or even what they even know themselves. So that's the whole point of the Aspergian Journal, is to give that empowerment and inspiration, and sharing my experiences and story with you, and that so you can be able to take proactive steps towards creating a life and that you want, not what other people tell you to get. But even though I was struggling with my anxiety really badly during my 20s, and I was doing really well at college and university and developing as an autistic person, so really confronting my challenges and adversities that I had, and really challenging myself out of my comfort zone towards the kind of life that I wanted to live or work towards. And that has evolved over time. And sometimes as you get older, you start to think of things differently. You know, what you want out of life when you get to 30 odd might be different to what it was when you was a teenager. You know, and you are allowed to change your mind about certain things. You know, 10 years ago, I wanted a corporate career in business and be a chartered accountant. But it's only nowadays where I feel that maybe that lifestyle wouldn't suit me. You know, nowadays when I look at it, and maybe this is more suitable. You know, sometimes just things change and things evolve, and you are allowed to do that. So don't close yourself off, you know, from looking at new things and see where it takes you. You might be surprised. The worst thing that you can do is stay where you are and do that for the next 30, 40 years, and then get to old age and you think, God, I should have done that when I was younger, when I had the chance to do so. And as they say, life is too short, and that to be basically on the hamster wheel constantly and have nothing else to show for it. This idea of just working flat out for 50 years only to enjoy only 5-10 years, you're lucky if you can even see that much. You know, it's not really a sustainable way of living. You know, because if you got made redundant from your job tomorrow, you'll be replaced by someone else. You'll be an afterthought. And so what you're doing is allowing yourself to be absorbed by and be surrounded by people that don't really have your best interests at heart, whilst you've got a family back home that you're neglecting. And they're the ones that truly do have your best interests at heart. So why ignore them? And this is for everyone, not just autistic people. Because despite whatever challenges and other autistic people have, they still need a family network around them, and other people outside of their family network and that they can rely on. And that's something that you just have to build and be open, and that by undertaking new hobbies, and that can give you those opportunities, and that to be able to showcase your true self, and don't be ashamed of who you are. I mean, growing up, and I'd be quite nervous about wanting to showcase my autism and try and hide from it, but all it would do is it's another form of self-harm. Maybe not in the physical sense, but mentally. You know, you're self-harming yourself by denying you know, your true self and just live it. And I've been there. I know what the pain feels like. And it's only when I got into my 20s and I just adopted a more laid back and less serious approach to life that I started to feel more at ease at myself and not compare myself to others. And I am guilty of that as much as anyone. But you just have to, focus on focus on your own journey, because your experiences are unique to you. Even though we might have similarities, and if you are on the autistic spectrum, but they're still unique to you. And the people that you're comparing yourself to, they might not have necessarily had to go through those experiences. So why are you comparing yourself to people that are not really compatible and that with who you are? If there's anything, only compare yourself to the person that you were yesterday or last week or last year. As every month, every year goes by, you should be able to see progression of, right, where was I at the start of this year and where do I want to be this time next year? And if you continue to make yourself at 1% better every single day, you will see progression. And if you don't, then you're only gonna be guilty of yourself. And have I not taken that time and opportunity to make something different with your life? Now, I know that motivation, it can be very hard for autistic people if they haven't got a purpose or something that really gives them that drive to get up in the morning. And that's one of the biggest things that I do talk about with the Aspergian Journal, is about motivation and living to what your own purpose is. And having and identifying what your goals are, and strive towards those goals, no matter what hurdles you overcome to get there, and always be open-minded that you might have to take a different approach or a slightly different path to get there, and it might not always as smooth sailing as you'd like it to be. There's been many things that I've had to do where I'm working towards a certain goal, but I've had to take maybe a slightly different approach to it, or take more time than what I thought it would take to get there. But as long as you get there, that's all that matters. And continue to strive to become the best version of yourself. If you continue to do that, then you will become a better person for it. And you can look at yourself in the mirror and think, wow, look how much I can achieve if I put my heart and soul into it. How can autistic people become more self-confident with themselves and be able to turn the negativity of masking, how to flip that into something that's more positive and something that's more self-accepting and in themselves? Well, I've thought of a few suggestions and that might help you and to get you on that journey from being ashamed of being autistic to be more self-accepting and embracing it. Number 1, write down all the good and positive attributes about yourself in a journal. The first step to overcoming your masking behaviours is to identify and write down all the good and positive attributes that makes you the unique person you are, so it provides a visual perception or record of all the great things that you have got in your life, and it also is a mechanism to help you to express more gratitude to life in general. I know it can be a tough habit to get started and building a routine around journaling. And if you've read my previous newsletter and video where I've talked about journaling and how does it benefit autistic people, then I do go into more greater detail about how it benefits autistic people and what recommendations I give and that to build a routine that works for you. And what might work for me might not always necessarily work for you, but it's about being more open-minded to trying different things and see where it takes you. And you'll be surprised, even in yourself, that trying something new and that can lead you on a path and that to more or less anxiety and better understanding of yourself and more confidence as you tackle the obstacles in your life with far greater efficiency and that sheer determination that I think that every autistic person has, but it's just locked away somewhere within themselves and they just don't realise it yet. And it's our little mission to unlock it and see where it takes each and every one of you. Anything good in your life, it does require discipline and determination to overcome your limiting and negative beliefs and thoughts that is holding you back and changing them with something that is more positive and uplifting. And by doing so, and if you have a record of it in a journal, you can then start to reflect on the good things you do have in life and how it makes you the unique person you are, and you honour it well. As I've said already up to this point, that growing up as a child, I did struggle with self-confidence. And, by hiding my autism in front of others, or denying it in my case, was just creating those vicious cycles of anxiety and despair that just led to me, basically being all over the place and just feeling lost as a person and just not getting anywhere. And it was only when I found, discovered journaling and changing my thinking patterns, I started to accept my autism more better and just have a less serious laid back approach of how I dealt with things and not allow other people's limiting opinions or negative views about me stop me from striving forward to the life that I wanted to create or the dreams that I want to work towards, and just continue to live your life to the fullest as much as possible. Number 2, don't compare your unique journey to others and embrace your individuality. It's part of human nature that we do compare ourselves to others very often, and we have done for many centuries. But it's only in this modern age of social media and instant gratification that the concept of comparing ourselves to others is basically blown up on steroids, and it has caused divisions in society that is based on hatred and self-entitlement rather than this sense of having compassion for one another and the sense of community spirit. Also, comparing yourself to others has basically caused an epidemic of mental health and loneliness. And this is something that autistic people, myself included, have struggled with to a far greater degree than neurotypical people do. Now, I have done a newsletter and a video about mental health and how loneliness does impact autistic people, and how do you overcome those those anxious feelings and emotions, and that to bring more peace and harmony to your life, and be able to overcome adversities in life, and that with greater confidence. Growing up, I always struggled with why I can't be like my neurotypical peers, or do the same jobs that male members of my family can do. I would torture myself, mentally, of why didn't I have their inclinations or mindset for certain things. But it would only lead to just me putting more pressure on myself, in a way like I had to meet their approval, even though I didn't need to. I just wanted different things compared to my other members of my family, and I had to learn how to stand up for myself and follow what my mind, soul and heart wanted, and be happy overall, rather than following the views and opinions of others. My advice to everyone is to never stop believing in yourself, and stand up for what you want, not what others want or dictate that you have. If you believe in yourself, you'll be more happier and content with who you are and where you're going in life, rather than be in a situation where you are unhappy and unfulfilled just to satisfy other people. Number 3, use mindfulness and CBT to help you understand and overcome your anxious thoughts and feelings. If your autism masking is causing you so much anxiety and distress to the point where you don't know where to start, or need support with dealing with these thoughts and feelings, please consider looking into the concept of mindfulness and CBT, which is also known as cognitive behavioural therapy. And I have done a previous newsletter and video about mindfulness, so please do look back at that, where I do go into it quite in detail, and how you can use it to become more, not only self-reflective of where your thoughts are and where you are as a human being, but also to bring more positive affirmations about your life, and also to be more self-accepting of who you are as an individual. Mindfulness is a mental practice of paying attention to the present moment with openness, curiosity, and without judgment. So for autistic people, it's about increasing the awareness of one's experiences, which can be internal and external, and look at them in a non-reactive and accepting way, in efforts of becoming more immune to those thoughts and feelings that can cause the anxiety in the first place. So in the case of masking, sometimes it can be a habit that autistic people might be doing, and they're not even conscious about it. So having more awareness of when you're doing it, why you're doing it, and how do I change that habit for something that is more positive and more fulfilling in terms of accepting who you are, then the more better off you're going to be. Because as I've mentioned, masking is a negative experience for autistic people, and it's actually holding you back from living your true self. And that is something that we do want to change for the better. Because I would not want any autistic person to live their life and living a false life where they weren't able to live their true self and work towards the goals and dreams that they wanted. Instead, that they were just living up to the expectations and standards of others, which is the one way of going about things. when I was struggling with my anxiety and masking in general, and I wanted to become more self-confident within myself, I didn't want to stay in the position where I was, and I wanted to go somewhere where I felt more at ease with myself. And when I was struggling with depression quite bad 10 years ago, I had to basically research and really develop my understanding for mindfulness and cognitive behavioural therapy, and that basically becoming my own therapist, and that to help me understand, basically understand why was I having those thoughts and feelings and challenge them in a positive way. And as a result of using mindfulness and CBT, along with journaling, I have become more better as a human being of being able to tackle that my thoughts and feelings. Because I still get those moments of negativity, but it's just moving away from allowing them to hold you back so much, to allow them to pass by, because thoughts and that are just those. They are just thoughts. They don't really give a true reflection of who you are. And as I've mentioned many times, anxiety can play tricks on you, and it's about building that resilience to not be not to be held hostage by your anxiety, and actually turn it around where basically you've got to put it back on its leash. A lot of the methods that I created and I've actually talked about in my previous newsletter about mindfulness, I still use a lot of those methods even to this day, to help me self-regulate my overall well-being and to build acceptance of who I am as an autistic person and live my life to the full and towards the dreams and experiences that I want to make, whilst being more comfortable in my own skin. To conclude everything that I have said up to this point, autistic masking is a deeply ingrained behaviour many autistic individuals adopt to be able to navigate a neurotypical world that often misunderstands and dismisses their needs. Masking involves concealing their natural autistic traits, such as stimming, avoiding eye contact, and using prepared social scripts in order to appeal more socially acceptable when amongst other people. Whilst it may offer a temporary acceptance, the long-term impact includes chronic anxiety, low self-esteem, and even autistic burnout that every autistic person and that deals with at many points in their life. Research has indicated that over 80% of autistic adults engage in masking at various degrees, especially when young women are more particularly affected to masking due to their misdiagnosis and social pressures that's put on them compared to autistic men. In this powerful personal reflection and that of mine, I recount the challenges faced from an early misdiagnosis and the school bullying and that I struggled with and that during my school years, and that also led to me questioning my autism identity and self-worth. Those early experiences and that triggered these ever-ending cycles of anxiety and denial, leading to a diminished sense of self-worth and also well-being as well. However, The turning point really came when self-exploration and acceptance, particularly through journaling and self-reflection and a conscious effort to stop comparing oneself to others, recognising my unique journey and experiences helped me to develop the experience, to develop the resilience and more grounded sense of identity as an autistic person, something that other autistic people can apply to their own situations and hopefully make changes to their lives for the better. To rebuild that self-confidence, I emphasise the practical tools like mindfulness and cognitive behavioural therapy to understand and manage anxious thoughts and feelings that are often tied to autistic masking. And by challenging the societal expectations which were limited in their nature and embracing my autistic self, I show the newfound clarity, peace and purpose that helped me overcome these challenges and on the path of self-discovery and building more confidence as a human being. My autistic journey is a testament to the transformative power of self-acceptance, individuality, and rejecting the societal pressures to people where they want to conform, how much that can have an impact on other autistic people as they build towards their own dreams in life. But it also gives hope and empowerment to those that want to live freely and more authentically, and it is the core part of the overall mission behind the Aspergian Journal in advocating for autistic voices to be heard, valued and celebrated in all its forms and flaws and all. I hope you've liked this episode of the Aspergian Journal, and if you want to see more, please do subscribe to the Aspergian Journal on YouTube and Substack, and as we move forward to building a supportive and collaborative community and that is based on creative empowerment and inspiration. As always, thank you.